Okay, so are you ready to go deep? We're talking teens and social media today. We got a whole bunch of Reddit comments and a TechSpot article, and you sent all this in because you wanted to get to the bottom of this whole thing, right? Like, is it all bad news? Or are there some like bright spots that maybe we're not seeing?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that really pops out from this Pew Research Center survey is just how much has changed in the last 10 years. I mean, almost half of all teens are online basically all the time now,
Whoa.
which is crazy compared to just 10 years ago when it was only a quarter.
That's wild. And it's like more than just screen time, right? It's like how they're hanging out with friends, how they learn, and even like how they figure out who they are.
Yeah, totally. It's like they see their whole world through this like digital filter, you know? I mean, remember back in the day when we were kids and it was all about how much TV we were watching?
Uh-huh.
This is like that, but like times 100. So where are they spending all this time? YouTube is still king of the hill. 90% of teens are using it. But there's a new kid on the block.
Yeah, TikTok. It's everywhere you look, and the TechSpot article says it's at 63% usage among teens, especially girls.
It's huge.
But one thing that caught my eye in the Reddit comments, a lot of users are saying, like, TikTok's algorithm can kind of trap you in this bubble,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's designed to keep you hooked. And a lot of times that means showing you more of what you already agree with.
Right,
It makes you wonder, how much control do we really have over what we see online?
right. Like we're living in these little curated worlds. Okay, but what about Facebook? The Reddit comments made it sound like teens wouldn't be caught dead on there.
Yeah, it seems like Facebook is becoming the new landline phone, something your parents use.
Huh?
But here's the thing, WhatsApp is also owned by Meta,
Right.
and it's actually gaining popularity with teens. Like 23% are using it.
So they're ditching the whole sharing your life with everyone thing on Facebook, but they're into this more private messaging thing on WhatsApp? Huh.
Yeah.
I wonder if this means like teens are wanting more private connections online, you know? Instead of like broadcasting everything to the world.
Maybe it's a sign of like a bigger change in how teens think about their online identity and their privacy.
Yeah.
They're growing up with this idea that anything they do online could be seen by anyone and it's permanent. And maybe they're pushing back against that.
Makes you wonder if this wanting to be more private is going to change social media like as a whole, you know? Well, while WhatsApp's getting bigger, there's another platform that seems to be fading away, Twitter, or X as they call it now.
Yeah, Twitter usage has like totally dropped from 33% 10 years ago to just 17% now.
Wow.
And some people on Reddit think it's because X is all about news and, serious stuff, which might not be that interesting to teens who are more into, visual stuff and stuff they can interact with.
Yeah, like teens want to create and share, not just, comment on stuff.
Yeah.
And speaking of platforms that might not be around for much longer, TikTok might get banned in the U.S. The U.S. Court of Appeals is saying it either needs to be sold to U.S. owners or it's got to shut down by January 19th.
Yeah, this is all about data privacy and whether it's safe for a Chinese company to have access to so much data from users in the U.S.
And the Reddit comments are all over the place on this one. Some people are like, it's about time someone did something about misinformation and data security. And then others are saying it's the government, like, overstepping its boundaries and messing with online freedom.
It's complicated for sure. There are good arguments on both sides. It really shows the tension between wanting to protect users' data, but also making sure people can say what they want online.
Yeah, this is definitely one to keep an eye on. So let's step back for a second and look at the big picture here. What do all these changes mean? Like the move to more private messaging, the decline of some platforms, and maybe TikTok getting banned. What does all this tell us about the future of social media?
I think what's really interesting is that we're moving away from these one-size-fits-all platforms like Facebook. It's becoming more fragmented.
Fragmented, what do you mean?
Like teens aren't putting all their eggs in one basket anymore. They're using different platforms for different things.
Yeah.
Like YouTube for videos, TikTok for entertainment, Instagram for how things look, WhatsApp for private chats. Each platform does its own thing.
So it's not about finding that one perfect platform anymore. It's more like finding the right tool for the right job.
Exactly. And I think this trend of having a bunch of different social media platforms that all do different things is probably going to keep going.
Yeah.
New platforms will pop up and the old ones will have to change to keep up with, what users want.
Yeah.
Especially those tech-savvy teens who are always looking for the next cool thing.
Oh, and speaking of teens always looking for the next cool thing, I just remembered something funny from the Reddit comments. A lot of users were joking about how Facebook is where teens go to spy on their parents.
Laura?
Yeah, like it's their window into this ancient world of old people technology.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But it does say something, Like technology can become a way for teens to define themselves and even rebel against older generations. It's kind of like how we thought email was like the coolest thing ever, and now to them it's like ancient history.
I know, right? Makes you wonder what the next uncool platform will be. Maybe Instagram will be the new Facebook. Or maybe something totally new will come along and change everything.
It's pretty exciting to think about. And it reminds us that we're all still figuring this out, you know, like how to use these tools in a healthy way, how to balance our online and offline lives, and how to build real connections in a digital world.
Yeah.
These are things we all have to figure out no matter how old we are.
So true. And that's exactly what we're going to keep digging into in part 2 of this deep dive. So stay tuned.
Mhm.
You know, it's so easy to get caught up in like the tech itself, but really it's all about the people, right? And something that really struck me reading through all those Reddit comments was like, how funny teens are. They're making all these jokes about Facebook being for old people. Like they wouldn't be caught dead on there.
Yeah, it's true. It's like their way of like, setting themselves apart from the older generation.
Right.
Like how we thought email was the coolest thing in the world,
Oh my.
and now it's like totally ancient to them.
I know, right? It
Well,
makes you wonder, like, what's going to be the next uncool platform? Will Instagram be the new Facebook? Or is there something completely new on the horizon that's going to, like, change everything? I mean, this is what keeps things interesting, right? Like, how we connect is constantly changing.
Yeah, for sure. And it really shows us that we're all kind of figuring this stuff out as we go along,
Mm-hmm.
like how to use these tools responsibly, how to balance online life with real life, and how to actually connect with people in this digital world.
It's a lot to think about for sure. So as we wrap up this deep dive into teens and social media, I'm curious what you hope our listeners will take away from all of this.
I think the most important thing is to stay curious. Don't just dismiss these trends as kid stuff.
Right.
Really pay attention to how young people are using technology. Ask questions. Talk about it. Their insights can really help us all navigate this constantly changing digital world.
I love that. And I think it's so important to approach all of this with empathy, Instead of like judging or dismissing teens' online habits, let's try to understand them. Let's see these trends not as threats, but as chances to learn to connect and to evolve alongside the next generation.
Exactly. It's about fostering understanding, not fear. And remembering that technology is just a tool.
Mm.
It can be used for good or for bad. It's up to us to decide how it's used, how it affects our lives, and how it shapes the future.
So, to our listeners out there, we challenge you to stay curious, stay empathetic, and keep talking about all of this because this conversation about teens and social media, it really has the power to change our world.
And as you're navigating all of this, remember to focus on those real human connections. Whether it's face-to-face or through a screen, those connections are what really matters.
Beautifully said. While we've been talking about the trends and the concerns, I can't help but think about like the possibilities. What if instead of focusing on all the negative stuff, we focused on the potential of technology to empower young people?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this. Tell me more.
What if we saw social media not as like a distraction, but as a platform for creativity, for learning, for social change? What if we helped teens use these tools to make their voices heard, to connect with people who share their passions, to build communities around the things they care about?
That's a powerful vision.
Hmm.
And it's already happening in so many ways. You see teens using social media to raise awareness about important issues, to advocate for causes they believe in, to connect with mentors and peers who get them.
Exactly. And I think that's something worth celebrating, something worth investing in, because when we give young people the tools to use technology for good, we're not just shaping the future of social media, we're shaping the future of our world.
I couldn't agree more. As we've been talking about all of this, it occurred to me that we've been talking about this generational shift in social media as if it's like something totally new. But it's really just a continuation of something that's been happening forever. Each generation finds new ways to connect, to communicate, to express themselves.
Yeah, totally. It's like we forget that our parents and grandparents had their own youth culture with its own trends and fads, and they probably worried about the impact of rock and roll or television, just like we worry about social media today.
Right. It's a good reminder that change is inevitable.
Hmm.
And while it can be scary, it can also be really exciting because it means we're always evolving, always learning, always finding new ways to connect and create.
I love that perspective. It's not about clinging to the past, it's about embracing the present and looking towards the future with a sense of possibility. So speaking of the future, there's one more trend I think we should touch on. We talked about how teens are moving away from Facebook towards more visual platforms like TikTok and Instagram. But what's interesting is that this whole visual communication thing is happening with people of all ages.
Yeah, it's not just for teens anymore. It's like a cultural shift.
Mm.
We're all becoming more visual. From the rise of video content to the popularity of emojis and memes, we're using more and more images and videos to express ourselves.
Hmm, that's fascinating. I wonder if it has something to do with just how much information we're bombarded with these days. Like maybe visuals are just a more efficient way to process all that stuff, to grab our attention, to convey emotion.
It's a good theory. And it makes you think about the future of communication. Will text become obsolete? Will we all be communicating through emojis and GIFs someday?
Who knows? But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And it reminds us that even the way we communicate is constantly evolving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to our main point. Stay curious. The world of communication, like the world of technology, is always changing. And the best way to navigate it is to be open to new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of connecting.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So to our listener, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going. Because the future of communication is being shaped right now, and we all have a role to play.
And it's a future that's being shaped not just by technology, but by people who use it, especially young people.
It's like they're leading the way, you know? Exploring this whole new digital world. And like we saw with TikTok blowing up and Facebook kind of fading away, they're not afraid to move on if a platform isn't doing it for them anymore.
Yeah, they're not stuck in the same old ways of thinking like some of us under folks.
Yeah.
You know, they're way more flexible. They adapt really quickly,
Uh-huh.
which is exactly why we need to be paying attention to what they're doing online.
Mm.
You know, listening to what they have to say and trying to understand their point of view.
They're not just the future of social media, they're the future, period.
Right.
That future is happening right now.
Yeah,
So we better get with the program.
I like that. We better get with the program. And, this whole conversation, it's been about way more than just technology. It's about people.
Mm-hmm.
It's about trying to understand each other and build bridges between generations. And it's about recognizing that we're not just along for the ride when it comes to the future. We're actually the ones creating it.
Together. So to our listener out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going. This whole world of teens and social media, it's fascinating. It's
Yeah.
always changing. And who knows, maybe you'll even learn something new about yourself along the way.
You never know.
And on that note, it's time for us to sign off. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.